Let's dive in. First, when we talk about the outdoor recreation economy, what do we mean? Well, generally, it's the people, infrastructure, and organizations that connect people to places, which can look a lot of different ways, as we see here. And at a national scale, this economy is a powerhouse. It generates 4.3 million jobs, or 3% of US employment, and $689 billion in gross output. Here you can see percentage GDP per state contributed to by outdoor recreation. And this industry is on the rise, in large part due to COVID-19 and related behavior shifts. More Americans are getting outside, visiting recreation destinations, and relocating near recreation assets than ever before. This chart shows growth in segments of the recreation economy during the first year of the pandemic, a time when most segments of the economy were shut down. Because of this, some estimate as many as 1 to 2 million new jobs in the next 10 years will be hired in outdoor recreation. And outdoor recreation isn't just a nice to have, it contributes to economic resilience for communities around the United States, from increased tourism, new residents and businesses, and increased income, to revitalized main streets, new tax revenue, and healthcare savings as residents enjoy the health benefits of time outside. And with new remote or hybrid work opportunities, more talent is relocating to locations with great access to outdoor recreation. For this reason, outdoor recreation investments support growth across all sectors. And ours provides great opportunity for any type of job or career. According to today's report, the outdoor industry also has 31,000 openings in the marine sector alone, just one of our segments. So it's important that we are attracting talent across the industry as well as connecting this talent to the skill sets most needed. So who works in the outdoor recreation industry? This helpful graphic from the Oregon State University Center for the Outdoor Recreation Economy defines the types of recreation organizations that fall into the public, private, and NGO sectors. When many think of outdoor recreation jobs, they picture the consumer-facing roles, like guides and outfitters, that provide core experiences for this industry. But they may not realize the diversity of jobs that sustain this economy behind the scenes: the biologists, manufacturers, technicians, advertisers, developers, financial experts, and more. Today's report organizes outdoor recreation jobs into new categories for the first time, based on the unique skills of the job holder. These categories, technical specialists, participant-facing, and integrators, illustrate the wide diversity of outdoor jobs that help connect people to places and generate meaningful careers. To support a deeper dive into what these jobs look like in practice, we're also excited to debut a new career path module developed in partnership with the Oregon State University Center for the Outdoor Recreation Economy, or OSU CORE. Here you can learn firsthand from outdoor professionals in diverse roles, how they got there, what they do, what they like about their work-life balance, and advice for the next generation of the outdoor workforce. Here you can see Darryl Anthony, Director of the Maryland State Office of Outdoor Recreation, who's one of today's panelists. To learn more, I'm delighted to pass it over to Lee Davis, Executive Director at OSU CORE, to introduce today's panelists. Lee will be moderating today's conversation. Lee?
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Davis. I'm, as Chris said, the Executive Director of Oregon State University's Center for the Outdoor Recreation Economy. The focus of our center is on delivering a new kind of workforce development programming, which is accessible and nationally scalable, with an end goal of upskilling and diversifying the workforce of the recreation economy to help it reach its full potential. Delighted to be here today and with the panelists in particular, many or all of whom we interviewed for the modules project that Chris just demoed with you earlier in this presentation. But before I start, I want to call out a couple of things that sort of spurred this research. there's I think a commonly held misconception amongst policymakers and the public that there aren't, quote, real jobs in the outdoor recreation economy, that they're all part-time or seasonal or low-wage jobs, and that you can't really build a life and a career out of this industry. And those of us that are deeply inside the industry know that that's definitely not the case. And so one of the things we're doing today is starting to showcase icons, people that can inspire others to get jobs in the recreation economy, because they really do have lifelong careers and, you know, good paying jobs and homes and families, and they contribute to their community in meaningful ways. So so that's what we're up for today. I'm excited to introduce our panelists. We're going to start with Theresa Martinez and ask each of the panelists to talk a little bit about their work-life balance and a little bit around why they work in this industry. Theresa?
Thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. Theresa Martinez, and I am the Executive Director of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition, which is the lead national partner working with the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, and Bureau of Land Management in the cooperative stewardship of the Continental Divide National Scenic Trail, which is a trail that runs from Mexico to Canada along the Continental Divide and is 3,100 miles long, goes across 5 states. I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which are also on the homelands of the Jicarilla and Tewa people, Jicarilla Apache and Tewa people, and which is also part of a whole strategy of how we manage long trails, which is you can't manage them all from a central location. So folks at CDTC were sprinkled all across the entire Continental Divide. So some folks are based in our main office in Golden, Colorado. I'm here in Santa Fe. Other folks are in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Other folks are up in Helena, Montana, which is one of those things that when you work in the outdoor profession, sometimes you're lucky to also live in the places that you get to protect. So that's wonderful. You know, I just wanted to share that, you know, my entire career, I would frame as following my heart and using my head. A lot of times I made decisions that were really not conventional for anybody, much less a Latino woman. But I very early on discovered a love for long distance trails and began volunteering on them. And it, one after another decision led me to becoming an employee at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy for 20 years, and then led me west to the Continental Divide Trail, to where I worked for one organization for 6 years, and then it actually closed its doors, and myself and our colleagues found ourselves without a partner to work on the Continental Divide Trail. And next thing you know, we were forming a new nonprofit, and I became an executive director, which on my life list of things was never one of the things I ever wanted to do. And so here we are 10 years later. And I think that that's probably true of just following your heart and using your head and being smart. And taking care of yourself along the way. And I would say that, you know, my whole goal in the work that I get to do, aside from setting up our team with all the resources they need to be successful and to be great leaders in the work that they do, is that we're setting each other up for success and creating opportunities and spaces for more people to not so much follow in our footsteps, to use their own footsteps to lead beyond where we take it. And that comes with the whole philosophy of how we create. And I think it probably comes from having been a volunteer to now an executive director, and thinking long-term about what skills and talents people need to be successful in this work that maybe aren't in that traditional conventional way of schooling and education and all the things you need. It's more life skills and how we help cultivate those. And I am grateful to be here. I feel like it's been an incredible privilege in the career that I've had for over 30 years. And look forward to this conversation and inspiring all of you to sort of think about how you can be in this field or continue in this field with the confidence and support you need to do it in your way, so that we can begin to really reimagine conservation and outdoor recreation and all the pieces that we need, so that we actually have even more capacity to do incredible things in the future. And so in terms of work-life balance, I can tell you that it's a lot. I do everything I do in this work with passion. And I would love to say that there's a separation of work and life, but it's probably not as much as I wish it or it should be. But it's because I love what I get to do. And I love thinking about what I get to do. And hopefully all of you can find places that you have the same passion and opportunity to do it, even when you're sleeping. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Theresa. Darryl from Maryland, can you go next and talk a little bit about work-life balance and why you're here in this industry?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Darryl Anthony. I am the Executive Director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Maryland. I work under the Department of Natural Resources, and I also work closely with our Department of Commerce here in this great state of Maryland. The main purpose of this job is to grow the outdoor recreation industry in the state of Maryland. My work is guided by 5 key principles or focus areas: environment and stewardship, education, workforce development, economic impact, personal health and wellness, equity, access, and inclusion. We utilize these areas to help us guide our decisions for expanding recreation in the state of Maryland, using Maryland's great recreational assets as the backdrop for creating opportunities in this state. Maryland has a very unique opportunity with its mountains. We have oceans, we have the beautiful Chesapeake Bay and other resources, and we try to utilize these resources in a positive way and find the appropriate balance between creating recreational opportunities and not doing anything to take for granted the value of these rich natural, cultural, historical, and recreational resources. My daily work includes working closely with legislators, government leaders, tourism industry, educational institutions, national outdoor recreation leaders, private business owners, workforce development organizations, etc. I work daily with these groups, meetings, field trips, experiences, etc. I love what I do. I love the work that I do. I love the people that I work with. It's a great, great job and a great state to work in. My work-life balance is very simple because not only I have a passion for outdoor recreation, my family does as well. I graduated from Frostburg State University with a degree in recreation. My son has graduated from Frostburg State University with a degree in recreation. My wife has worked for state parks in her career. My daughter also is in the outdoor industry, and we all share an equal passion for what we do. And with that,
Darryl. I'm going to have Tim Scott go next from the RV Technical Institute. You talked a little bit about work-life balance and why you're doing what you're doing.
Hello, my name is Tim Scott, and I'm currently working for Camping World, very well-known brand, very big company. I didn't start off with Camping World. I kind of worked into this company, started off with an independent RV dealer. And when I first started doing this job, I never even seen a camper up front and personal, only saw like stuff on movies. And that's just a testament as far as blue collar workers, because I'm a blue collar worker, I'm a technician. I work on campers, I fix campers, but to buy these campers, it's a big investment for them so that they can go and enjoy the outdoors at these wonderful parks and different places around the country. And it's very important to them when it's not working or when they're getting one brand new. And it's a really good, fulfilling job. And I just like to highlight the fact that there's a very large growth potential in this industry that I never even heard of. It was kind of a humbug how I found out about the job through a local pastor. But starting off with no experience, I came into the industry making $15 an hour, and now I'm in the mid-30s. So that's a lot of growth for someone with no college education, no degrees or anything like that. All of my education as far as certifications come from the industry, coming from RVTI, and that has pushed me from, before I started doing this, I was a lube technician, making about in the mid-20s a year, and now I'm making in the low 70s a year. So for a guy just coming out of high school with no college education, this is a great opportunity for my family and for people who may not have the same opportunities as someone with higher education. I love doing it because of the people, and I like working with my hands. I do like the trades, and this is basically just another job in the trades: plumbing, electrical work, and carpentry. So that's what I take away from it, and I just am amazed at how far you can go in this industry starting from nothing.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. I'm going to pass it to Alicia Smith, our last panelist here today.
Hi, everybody hear me okay?
Mhm.
This is Alicia Smith from Mount Bachelor in Bend, Oregon. I am the lift maintenance electrical supervisor. It's definitely a program or a side of lift maintenance that is newer to Mount Bachelor. We're trying to really organize it. Within the industry, it's becoming more common for the technicians to become electricians, or at least electrical savvy, just because there is so much involved in these machines and all the electrical components. As Teresa had mentioned before, work-life balance is not always easy. However, since I love the outdoors, and that is a definite benefit and bonus of working up here, is that my office is outside for the most part. So even on a bad day, you can look across, see the Cascades, and just smile and enjoy nature. But yeah, I am definitely dedicated to my job. So that does consume a lot of my time away and during my normal work office hours. But it is a benefit, in my opinion, to work in the outdoor industry, for sure. It's a healthy environment to be in. Everybody who's in the same industry that I'm in within the ski industry, it has a very, very similar mindset. So it's easy to help each other, to outsource, and to find that community that you need to help you get through your day if there's something that comes up that you're not quite certain about, because someone out there has always seen it, or at least been through it before. Yeah, we live and work in the outdoors. So a big part of what we do is also realizing that our weather patterns have changed, our environment is changing, and we need to be progressive on how we continue to do our job in the future and maintain this area for all of our clientele in the future, skiers and snowboarders and hikers and disc golfers and bikers to come. We offer a lot of different things up here. It's not just skiing. We have full summer deal as well. So we do zip lining, mountain biking, lots of hiking, disc golfing, you name it, you can pretty much do it up here. And that is amazing. It's also a lot to take on as a resort, but that's where our community within the resort, all of our departments work really well together. We are a family. And that's one of the reasons we choose to be here.
That's great. Thanks, Alicia. I'm guessing, given the hundreds of people on this call, that not everybody's even aware of what a ski lift is. So at some point we might want to try to feed into that. But the next question that we're going to cover is sort of how you got here. So what are the skills that you learned along the way, and what was your path to getting to this job? And I think what I'm going to do is just go backwards through the panelists, since you're already on with us, Alicia. And also because your story is really interesting because you started in a different field. So I think if you could just talk about how you started out in education and found your way into this job, and specific to skills, I'd say.
Definitely, Lee. It has been a long road of various skills. So I didn't start in the ski industry to begin with. I actually built overland vehicles for a spell. I was in the healthcare industry. My background originally was archaeology and anthropology and forestry. So none of which exactly translated to where I am today. But one of the major skills that I utilize on a daily basis is troubleshooting and problem solving. That's something that led me to where I'm at now. So for a break in the professional industry of healthcare, I wanted to get back outside, since that's where my familial background is from. All my family worked in the outdoors. So a good friend suggested that, hey, you know what? Mount Bachelor has part-time jobs. Why don't you go up there, try something completely new and see what you think? That was in 2005. So now we're here at 2022. And although I started as a ski lift operator, so again, a ski lift is a giant machine that will transpose or move people from the bottom of a mountain towards the top so that you can ski without having to actually earn your turns, as we call it. Instead of hiking up or skinning up, you use this machinery to get yourself propelled up the mountain, and then you can come down and enjoy this the snow. But yeah, so I started out in operations and quickly learned that my aptitude was towards maintenance and fixing things. So I eventually moved into lift maintenance, and from there have gone back and forth with the mountain. I moved during this time, I went out and decided to build overland vehicles. At the time on the mountain, my position that I'm in currently really didn't exist, and there wasn't much movement. There wasn't much guidance from technology, or excuse me, like technical schools or management at that time to help me progress. So I moved on, learned some new skills, and then got to talking with someone back at the resort. After I had installed a ski lift, I went and built a ski lift too for a season. And they needed someone who was electrically inclined, and they knew that that was a interest of mine at the time. So I asked that if they could put me through the electrical apprenticeship program, then I would be more than happy to come back and join the mountain team, the family again, because I'd actually have more to offer and have a higher quality of skills to offer them.
Yeah, there's some, we've been working a lot with the ski industry and Alicia on some certification programs for lift techs, actually, because the ski industry has reported some pretty dramatic statistics that I think more than half of the 10,000 people in America that maintain all of the ski lifts at all of the resorts across America, a majority of those people are going to be retiring in the next 5 years. And when a ski lift goes down, it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a day for a resort in lost revenues. So the cost of not having qualified technicians is extraordinary for these resorts. So let's move back to Tim. If you could talk a little bit, you did in your intro a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about sort of how you got here. And I think the experience you had with the RV Technical Institute and the certifications there and what that experience was like would be really interesting for everybody.
Okay, so I began my career in the military. I was in the Air Force for 8 years, and I did electronics. I was in maintenance for air traffic controllers, ground radar, things of that nature. So I did have a good aptitude in that area. I've always been kind of handy because my father was a carpenter, and we grew up building homes and commercial projects and things like that. We kind of grew up doing that. So when I started in the RV industry, I had no experience. A lot of people who work there at the dealership, they kind of came up living in RVs or working on RVs or as part of their family life. So they knew something about it. I didn't. So as a result, over 90% of the people that worked in that dealership had no formal training. So I had to get formal training because that was the only way for me to be able to excel at the job. So that's why I pursued the RVTI, the certification programs, because literally people really were so busy, they didn't have time to help train me. So it was just kind of, I was kind of on my own. So I started reading books. And then when the books weren't enough, I found out about the certification programs, which were very excellent, very thorough. And I began doing those online. Then I did the hybrid classes. Then I did the in-person classes, going all the way from level 1 to currently right now I'm a level 3. That training was essential to my success in the RV industry because they taught me things that I would not have known how to handle without that hands-on training at the RV Technical Institute. So it is an invaluable resource, and it allows someone with no training to become a very highly skilled technician in just a couple of years. You know, it doesn't take very long. I think that's a very short time to grow in a field like this with such potential and opportunities. So it was definitely the deciding factor that allowed me to rise in the pay ranks. Of course, with more experience and with more certifications, you can you can earn more money. And it was non-traditional. I didn't go to college or anything, but it was similar in the workload that you had to do. You had to still work while you did the schooling. So, and that was great for my work ethic and everything. So I really appreciated that. And it was a great experience. I totally recommend it. In my area, there's not a lot of information about these type of careers. I meet so many people who could do this, but they simply do not know about it.
Thank you very much, Tim. Darryl, can you talk a little bit about your pathway, which was in comparison to some others here, pretty linear, actually?
Sure. So my career started at age 17 out of high school. I started as we call it the bowl patrol. Back in the day, it was 8 hours a day of cleaning bathrooms and state parks. I cleaned all of them. Take a few hours to get them clean, and then by the time you get them clean, you start all over again. And I did this for my first year working for the state park system. I did that while I transitioned from high school to college, earned my bachelor's degree in Parks and Rec while still working in the state parks, both as maintenance and then seasonal park ranger. Once I graduated from college, I earned a position as a law enforcement park ranger in the state of Maryland, the state park system, and worked over 30 years with the Park Service. I worked as a ranger, assistant manager, park manager, and ultimately regional manager for state parks, and absolutely loved the career. After completing my career as a park ranger, I applied for and was successful at filling a position as the assistant secretary for Maryland Department of Natural Resources, where I had the opportunity to run the state park system, state forest system, wildlife and heritage system, engineering and construction, land acquisition and planning, and our Maryland Environmental Trust, which is an easement program. Did that for 4 years or 3.5 years under our current governor, and retired a couple years ago from that position, and was recently hired back to DNR as the position we just talked about, as the executive director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So that's my my career path. It's been believe it or not, 40 years that I've been working for DNR, and have enjoyed literally every minute of it.
That's fantastic. Teresa, can you go next and describe a nonlinear pathway?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of similarities to Darryl. I started out as a volunteer building trails, and I have been lucky enough that I've been in this career for almost 35 years now, which just, it's like, how did that even happen? I don't even know. But I did. I started out with the Connerock crew, which is the Appalachian Trail Conservancy's one of their original trail crews. And I spent my summers building trail on the Appalachian Trail all over the Southeast. And it led me to a job with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And I'll never forget when they offered me the job as an assistant regional rep for Central and Southwest Virginia. One of the first times I had an assistant regional rep, I was offered a job at $16,000 a year, full health benefits, and I thought I had won the lottery. This is back in the early 90s. And I went to Virginia Tech, have a 4-year degree in wildlife management and fisheries from Virginia Tech. And I remember telling my dad, I got a job and it's $16,000 a year. And I was like crickets on the other end of the phone. Like, he was like, you just, like, it was unfathomable to him that I was accepting such a low salary. But for me, I knew it was a long game. You know, that job led me to working with a lot of trail clubs along the AT and doing a lot of trail design. So I moved from trail building to trail designing and laying out a lot of the trail that's all over the Southeast for the Appalachian Trail. And it also led me to, you know, realizing that I really liked working with people more than I liked a lot of other things. And so it led me to get a master's degree in human dimensions of natural resources from Virginia Tech. And then I actually went back to work with ATC, and then eventually led to work with the Continental Divide Trail Alliance. And then, as I mentioned, that organization closed, and myself and other colleagues were kind of left like, well, what do we do? And I think I look back at that point at 20 years of a career, realizing that It was either now or never. If we didn't do it, the wrong people would. And so we created this whole new nonprofit with a whole different mentality. And I think the reason I did that was that while in my career, I always had great mentors who really invested in me and told me that I had a lot more skill than I had that I realized than maybe what I realized that I had. I think that was really the blessing and the privilege that I had in my career, is that I always had people inspiring me to be better and seeing better in me than I even saw in myself, which allowed me to really, whenever an opportunity presented itself to me, whether it was moving west or taking a job or whatever, that I was able to say yes. And that was that following my heart and using my head to do it. Today I'm really privileged to be an executive director, because I feel like, having come up from as a volunteer to where I am today, that it's taught me every aspect of the job that we're doing at the CDT. And it's helped me also be very empathetic and compassionate to what every person in this organization has to experience. And I think it makes me a better leader. But I would say that in all the work that I've done, it's really helped me know that when I used to joke about being queen of the world, well, now that I am queen of the world, or at least the CDT world, I have to live up to that expectation of what a great leader is, and how you continue to be a great mentor and a great leader, and somebody who inspires other people to see more in themselves than they see in themselves at that time. And so for me, it's just really been a very straightforward career path, with a lot of opportunities and that were unexpected, that probably weren't always traditional or safe, but I did them anyways. So here I am.
Thank you very much. Next, I want to focus on both Tim and Alicia and talk a little bit about technical skills, and specifically sort of, what do you think, what are you guys seeing in your roles around skills that are really needed in the future? Alicia, you talked about the need for electrical skills. One of the things we talk about at the center is that all outdoor equipment used to be really, really simple, like bicycles used to be pretty simple, and now bicycles have sensors and solar panels and all sorts of other things going on. And I know from our friends in the RV industry that, that RVs are mostly standard, but when things go wrong or something, happens here and there, they start to look and feel more like custom products all the time. So there's, and then the other thing I've heard anecdotally from the industry, also from the ski industry, I think from a faculty member at Colorado Mountain College, is that incoming students wanting to learn how to maintain ski lifts, which are some of the most complicated machines in our industry, literally have never held a hammer before. So I just want to throw this out to both of you to talk a little bit about what does this new incoming generation need to learn if they want to have jobs like yours? Alicia, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So I had wrote out kind of a list of the technical skills or trades that are more applicable to what we do. Of course, electricians are number one, LMEs, PJs, PJ supervisors. So PJ meaning plant journeyman, LME, limited maintenance electrician, and then plant journeyman supervisors in my field are the most applicable. PLC training and diagnostics is also a huge part of what I do. So not every lift is I'm not able to necessarily access the programs that are in there by the vendor, but some are accessible. So I need to know how to go in there, change small modifications within the programming to meet our needs. Electric motor specialists and technicians is a huge one, because that's another thing I do. I do all the electric motor maintenance and services. I also send it out to a local shop for the bigger stuff that I can't do. Engineering, so electrical and mechanical engineers are highly utilizable in this industry. I outsource to a lot of mechanical engineers and electrical engineers for upgrades and modifications to our system, since we don't have anybody in-house. And then I do the work personally. And then fabrication and installation is a big one. So again, having that mechanical aptitude is very key to understanding, because you can't fix something if you don't understand how it works to begin with. So as long as you can understand what a machinery's function is and its purpose, then you can figure out how to fix it if something is to fail.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned PLCs for the audience. Those are programmable logic controllers. So they're like everybody probably on the call has been annoyed trying to program their new thermostat at home, and a PLC is like one of those on crack. It's like 1,000 times more complicated, and you even have to know a little bit of code to make them work, but they affect how motors and electrical systems interact with each other and work. So Tim, can you talk a little bit about like what skills you think the incoming generation needs to be able to fix an RV?
All right. So today's RVs are a lot different from yesteryear's RVs because they are all interconnected with the internet. You have a lot of logic control systems that are integrated even in the most basic campers. You can get a $30,000 camper and it's going to have a logic control in it so that you can interface with that unit from your cell phone and be able to control the functions of your awnings, letting your slides out, turning your lights on and off, even controlling your climate control while you're away. Maybe you left your vent hood up and it's raining and you need to close it. So there's a lot of interconnected things through the logic control system, which might interest a lot of people in today's society who are very tech savvy. You get to use those skills working on RVs. When you take, there is a market for luxury RVs. You have your Prevost and your Airstreams and your Newmars, and you're talking about $500,000 to $1 million+ coaches. So you really want someone with those certifications who knows what they're doing. So if you come in the industry, you a very long way.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, it's thank you both for that. I think let's move on to Darryl and Alicia. Let's have you two talk a little bit about the skills. Sorry, Darryl and Teresa, I'm sorry. Have you two talk about the skills that you wished you would have learned along your way? Things that, in your job today, you're finding really, really important, and things that you've picked up along the way, but wish, that if somebody was new and coming into the workforce, you would tell them that they need to focus on, which, in our experience in the center, usually centers something around the skills we need to work with people in, sales and marketing and business leadership and communications and things like that.
So I can start first. I'll just say two things quickly, and those two areas where I feel like I could definitely use more experience, more training. Those two areas are grant writing. There's so much of what I do is wrapped around my ability to write grants and be successful with writing those grants. The second area is political science and having a basic understanding of politics. It has come to me through experience, but I sure could have benefited from having a little more political science exposure early on in my career.
I agree with that. About 10 years ago, I was in a panel discussion, and Jess Turner, who works with Chris at the Roundtable, was standing up and she said bicameral, bipartisan, and I'd never heard the word bicameral before that moment. So yeah, there's definitely some esoteric language on the policy front. Teresa, what do you think in terms of bringing volunteers and people together? And
yeah, I think the biggest thing, a lot of the work that we do and have always done is in partnership spaces, and I think understanding how to deal with conflict, like conflict mediation and actually just facilitation of meetings, how to manage a good meeting so that people actually stay on task, because we're all very passionate and we like to talk a lot. So keeping people focused and really to the subject matter. So also we're not dragging meetings out till forever. It took me a really long time to learn how to assert leadership in that space without one feeling like, sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but can we time move on, so I think those are important. But I think, I would just share from instead of the negative or the things that you lack, I would encourage people to also do some work in project management, like how to manage the timelines and how to also be flexible and be a good planner so that you can constantly adjust. Because the one thing I've learned in the years has been that nothing ever goes as planned. And if you can't be flexible, adapt, and be fluid in the moment to both make decisions and problem solve with a team, as much as times when you're by yourself, you can have all the skills on the planet. And if you can't do that well and do good at looking back at decisions once situations are resolved and evaluate them so that you can learn from them, because even if you've done everything right, there's always a debrief and there's always a feedback loop. Really getting good at not taking things personally so you can look at things objectively so that you can keep moving forward. Because it's just sometimes, well, in my entire life, nothing has ever gone as planned. And so I would say really being good at managing not to a plan, but to all the work you've done to plan for whatever is happening. And then again, yeah, just understanding how to work with people in a complex space and how to facilitate meetings so you can keep people on track and really be effective, because that's what we end up all doing all day long, is being in meetings. I'm sorry to break the news to most people, at least on my side of the stack. It's a lot of talking and a lot of meeting and very little doing sometimes.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So that's the sort of the panelist discussion portion of this webinar, and now we're gonna shift over to our colleague Kristen Freeny to talk a little bit about some key takeaways from the recent workforce study that we did. One of the themes that we're carrying through in the webinar today is around how to inspire the future generation to get jobs in this industry and to understand how to get jobs in this industry, and that they really are really good paying, cool jobs. And I think the big thing that sort of stuck out for me about the workforce study and about talking to all the panelists is something that Tim actually mentioned, which is that there's just a massive opportunity. We did some studies a few years ago at the beginning of the pandemic with ORR. And at the end of those studies realized that during the pandemic, the recreation economy had lost, I think at the peak of the pandemic, nearly 1 million jobs. And then that sort of spurred us to do some informal research around what's the recovery going to look like? What are the what's the job growth in this industry going to look like? And the numbers we came up with were staggering, that were, something like we would roughly project that over the next 10 years, the outdoor recreation economy is going to grow by 1 million jobs. So it's 100,000 new jobs every year for the next 10 years as we pull out of the pandemic and grow to full capacity to try to meet the needs. We're seeing real things happen right now. The Forest Service just hired over 1,000 recreation technicians to manage campgrounds and wilderness and ski resorts. And so there's some big opportunities out here. And Kristen, if you could introduce yourself first and your company, and then talk a little bit about your work and then some of the key takeaways, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lee. So hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Freeny, and I'm the founder of Path to Peak Education and Consulting, which is a company that specializes in workforce development, leadership education, and employee engagement projects with outdoor recreation industry clients. I'm also currently serving as the lead instructor for Oregon State University's Outdoor Industry Leadership Certificate, which is run through the Center for the Outdoor Recreation Economy, which Lee is the executive director for. And then prior to starting my own business here in the last couple of years, I served as the director for workforce development and professional education at the Outdoor Industry Association, where I led the Skip Yowell Future Leadership Academy and also led the launch of OIA's Outdoor Industry Business Certificate Program. So all of that is really to say that my passion is at the intersection of education and industry, and that's kind of where I've been living my life for the last several years. And now that you know a little bit more about me, I do want to dig into this exciting research. It's actually something that I've been a part of since my time at OIA. And so I'm really thrilled to kind of finally see this go out into the world and finally see the results for this get out into the industry's hands. So a little bit of background, during the fall of last year, Oregon State, in collaboration with Outdoor Industry Association, Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, and several other partners and supporters, including the VF Foundation, Path to Peak, Basecamp Outdoor, and the Confluence of States, distributed what we titled the Outdoor Industry Workforce Assessment Survey. And the purpose behind this survey was really to gain a better understanding of two critically important and interconnected components of the outdoor recreation industry. And those two components are talent attraction and retention initiatives and diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes. And we were hoping that by doing this survey, we would be accomplishing kind of four key things. One was highlighting workforce hiring and retention trends. Two was helping inform educational and upskilling initiatives that aim to make job opportunities in the outdoor industry more accessible and equitable. The third thing was providing a snapshot of where the industry stands in their efforts to increase diversity and inclusivity. We hear a lot about how we're making improvements, and the hard thing is to really understand where that baseline is and to quantify those improvements. And then the fourth thing was to bring to the surface best practices and inspiration for inspiration and adoption, so that other folks throughout the industry could borrow from what came through this survey and implement the things that were working well in their own organizations. Before I dig into a quick overview of kind of the survey and then get into those key takeaways, I want to note kind of two key things. One is that we acknowledge that the survey is just a starting point. It's an attempt to get our arms around incredibly complex and nuanced issues in the industry. And we know that we continue to have work to do to improve the survey and kind of make the outcomes more applicable. Two, I want to note that we're going to be doing a much deeper dive into this research during a webinar later this summer. And so my overview here is definitely not going to be exhaustive, but we really look forward to digging deeper with you all into this data at a later date. It'll probably be around mid to late August when we have that next webinar, and that'll be advertised through OIA and through ORR and a lot of the partner organizations that are here today. So quick overview on the participants. We had 107 responses to the survey from companies across the nation, representing 28 states and a variety of businesses, including manufacturers and brands, nonprofits, associations, retailers, outfitters and guiding services, and government agencies. A lot of representative of a lot of the folks we have on the great panel today, and representing the wide variety of career paths that are open in this industry. We had a fairly even split of respondents in large cities versus small towns or rural areas. And we know that the outdoor recreation economy relies heavily on small and medium-sized businesses. And that was certainly represented in this survey. 2/3 of respondents were small to medium-sized organizations with an annual revenue of less than 20 million. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and dig into the key takeaways. I'll wait until they get pulled up here. Perfect. So key takeaway one is that the industry expects to hire for a high volume of entry and skilled professional positions over the next year. This is in line with what we're seeing across most industries right now. Everyone is looking for talent for the most part. And as Lee had mentioned, we're looking at adding 1 to 2 million jobs in this industry throughout, over the next 10 years. Just with the 107 responding companies, we projected that those organizations would be hiring for 2,000 to over 3,000 openings, which when you consider that around 70% of the respondents were companies with 1 to 50 employees, that's a pretty significant amount of hiring that we'd be looking at. The majority of those positions would be concentrated in that entry to skilled professional level. So that also indicates that, we've got some key on-ramps into this industry for folks who are looking to get on board and to join and be a part of this. Key takeaway number 2 is that the largest barriers to recruiting hard to fill jobs are finding qualified applicants and lack of affordable housing options proximal to the job location. So 66% of respondents identified both of these individual issues as the largest barriers to their recruiting efforts. For those who are entrenched in the industry, affordable housing is probably no surprise. Outdoor recreation hubs tend to be very, very popular places to live, which drives up cost of living, makes the issue of affordable housing, especially across the full spectrum of entry level to executive level positions, even more challenging. We know that some companies are addressing this and trying to address this in really creative ways. But as the rise of remote work and folks being able to kind of work from wherever takes pace, we see this as potentially becoming more and more of a challenge. And we're going to have to become even more creative in how we address this and how we ensure that folks who are working in these kind of popular outdoor recreation hubs can afford to live in close proximity to their job location. Real quick, sorry. The second part of that is that finding qualified applicants. And this is actually really fascinating to me for someone who works in workforce development. I mean, anecdotally, we often hear about how it's so hard to break into this industry and that there's hundreds of people applying for every position. It's highly competitive. And so the fact that organizations are having a hard time finding qualified applicants within those large pools indicates that there's some sort of disconnect here. And that brings up some additional questions around, where candidates are missing this mark. I think it also highlights the need for collaboration between industry and educational institutions to help really close those knowledge gaps and to help create those really direct on-ramps from classroom to career. Our third takeaway is that outdoor companies are prioritizing flexible work arrangements and work-life balance as attraction and retention strategies ahead of employee benefits and financial rewards. So this was obviously accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, but it indicates that remote, flexible, and balanced work arrangements are in many cases here to stay. I do think it's important to flag one thing here, and that flexibility and work-life balance as perks do have limitations, and that employee compensation packages are still incredibly important, especially in the outdoor recreation hubs where we mentioned that cost of living is typically high. Finding affordable housing can be a challenge. So, I would caution companies to not lose sight of the importance of offering competitive compensation and benefits packages in addition to those flexible work arrangements. And finally, our fourth takeaway is that companies who have a diversity plan in place are utilizing a wide variety of methods and tactics to achieve their goals. However, companies that do not currently have a diversity plan in place largely do not plan to implement one or do not know where to start. And I want to caveat this quickly by saying that of the 107 respondents, only a small portion completed the DEI section, which I think in and of itself is an interesting takeaway. As researchers, we don't want to make guesses as to why that is, but I think it's important to point that out, that we did have some attrition from companies that filled out the other portion of the survey. So of that smaller subsection of respondents, 60% of companies report having a diversity plan. And these plans really run the gamut from employing DEI staff, having a DEI task force, prioritizing DEI in recruitment and retention, increasing representation across all levels of their organization and on their boards, as well as marketing and communication, inclusive marketing and communication efforts. So the tactics that folks are using are wide and varied. And I think, kind of on the unfortunate flip side of that coin is that, the other 40% of folks that completed the DEI section indicate that, they don't plan to implement a DEI plan, or they don't know where to start with one. And so I think that actually brings up a lot of additional questions of, why companies who don't have a plan don't understand the critical importance of that. And it also, I think, brings to light that as an industry, we need to do a better job of making those resources readily available, right? There are folks and there are organizations who have been doing this work deeply and effectively for many, many years. And how can we make those folks and those organizations more accessible, more visible to these organizations who, maybe want to start but don't know where to get started? So those are kind of the high level takeaways from the survey. I'm really excited to kind of talk more about this later in the summer, as I mentioned, and there'll be more information coming out about how we'll be addressing that in a webinar in mid to late August, and really look forward to digging deeper into everything with the industry.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that. Also want to give a quick shout out to Luis, Gloria, and Jen at the VF Foundation, who funded this research work in addition to ORR's funding. So the VF Foundation is the philanthropic arm of the VF Corporation that owns a number of outdoor brands, including the North Face and Timberland and Icebreaker and Smartwool and Napa Midgiri and things like that. So So we definitely want to thank them and OIA for their partnership. I'm going to pass it back to Chris, but also real quick, want to especially thank Teresa and Tim and Darryl and Alicia for your participation today. You were great panelists, and we really enjoyed talking to you. Chris?
Thank you, Lee, and reiterating a big thanks to all of our panelists from across the industry. I hope we really drove home today that an outdoor job is not created equal. There are technical jobs for technical specialists. There are participant-facing jobs for people who love interacting with people as they connect to place. There are these more integrated jobs of people who have skill sets from both. I thought our panelists illustrated that so effectively. Thanks so much for joining today's call. This is really the first step in a lot more workforce curriculum and initiatives to come out of ORR. So please stay tuned for further information from our team and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.